Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel, and I apologize for my lack of Sundance reviews. Throughout the past couple weeks I've been absurdly busy with school, but that's all beside the point. I'm going to be reviewing a bunch of different Sundance movies in this video, but I'm going to save a couple extra ones for this week. So I'm going to be reviewing Emergency separately because I absolutely loved Emergency, and I'm also going to be reviewing 892 separately as well because I think those two movies deserve their own video, specifically talking about those. And I will also eventually be doing a specific spoiler review for Resurrection when that movie finally gets its official release. So I'll be talking about it briefly in this video, but know that I wanted to talk so much more about that film. But for now, let's just talk about a bunch of other Sundance movies that I range from either just thinking it was okay to absolutely loving. So we're going to be starting off with a movie called Something in the Dirt. This is a movie directed by Benson and Moorhead, who has also done movies like The Endless and Resolution and Synchronic and a bunch of other movies that are always extremely interesting. And when I wanted to, pick a bunch of movies for Sundance, as soon as I saw that they had a film in the festival, I was immediately interested. Even though I have not ever really loved any of their films, I've always been drawn to them. I've always been interested in watching their movies. And I know The Endless is loved by many people. I think it's just okay, but I've only seen it the one time. I've always wanted to go back and watch it again. There's always a certain type of movie where I feel like if I watch it a second time, I'm going to love it just that much more. And that's what I feel like with almost every single Benson and Moorhead movie. Synchronic is the only one where I was like, oh my gosh, I love this movie. After first watch, I loved it, but I actually watched that after I watched this movie. So Something in the Dirt is probably before I watched Synchronic, was at the time my favorite Benson and Moorhead movie. Yes, I know people love The Endless and people love Resolution. I have not seen Spring yet, but I really dug this movie, and I know this is somewhat of a divisive one at the festival because a lot of people think that this movie has a lot of ideas and it says a lot of things, but it doesn't have a stance on exactly what it's about. And I would actually push back against that because this movie is not necessarily about the destination that you arrive at by the ending, but it's about the journey in which the characters took to get to that point. This movie is basically about these two guys who are neighbors in the same little apartment complex, and in one of their apartments they see this little floating crystal ashtray thing that is refracting all this light that they think is possibly like a ghost thing at first, or maybe it's something else, or maybe it's all these different theories that they have, all these different like conspiracy theories. It really does feel like characters that are in a very uncertain area. They're in a very uncertain times. They are uncertain about so many things about what's happening in this apartment, or what's happening with the other characters, or what's happening behind the scenes of whatever is happening, and they want to film it. They want to make a documentary about this thing. So it's a very small crew. They talk about in the afterwards posting that it was really, for the most part, just Benson, Moorhead, and then one camera guy, a bunch of other set designers and other people outside of the room, but it really was just those three people with a camera making a movie, and that to me is incredibly inspiring. I am a film student, and as a film student who went through school, during the times of COVID, that's how it was. We were limited to 4-person crews plus 2 cast members, and that was it. And the directors of this movie are the actors in this film, so they even had even less people working on this film, but it feels like their most professionally done movie yet. It is beautifully shot. It is incredibly well put together. They said that they cut it down from 3.5 hours to just under 2 hours, and this is a very long movie, and it has so many different ideas. Like I said, sometimes this movie does feel scattered because it doesn't have a sole particular identity, but it's really that paranoia that is permeated throughout this entire film, and the performances, and this just constant tension between these two characters that I think keep you invested throughout the entire thing, always keeping you wanting to know what actually is happening in this apartment, what is going on. You're always constantly fascinated with what's happening and you don't realize it, but throughout the entire film you're being fed this incredible story about paranoia, about conspiracy, about trying to solve this mystery that may never be solved. And so it is a brilliant storyline, and I actually really enjoyed the ending. The ending was phenomenal. I really like this movie. The next movie I want to talk about in this video is called Alice, starring Keke Palmer, directed by Alice Verlinden. And this is a movie that also came with probably the most negative reviews out of all the Sundance films, and it's getting a lot of comparisons to the movie Antebellum, which I never saw Antebellum, so I can't speak on that. I can speak on the reactions to that, and a lot of people hated Antebellum for various reasons, but they thought that the portrayal of the black characters and the story of slavery in that movie was just uncomfortable and just wrong, and just a poor portrayal of those things. And I think that's a poor association that this movie is getting. Yes, it's based on the same true story that Antebellum was, But this movie takes a different spin on it. It's not a horror movie. This is definitely a more stylistic movie, and the director has a very distinct thing that she wants to accomplish with this film, and that is trying to make it a very empowering story that is condensed into this short package of, if you know the story of the antebellum, slavery that was happening in the 1960s, this is based on a true story. You had people who never got out of slavery until 1961, and they escaped from that, and they saw that it was in modern times, and they found out that slavery had ended, hundreds of years ago. And that is just a crazy, just bizarre and just terrifying story, true story to find out. And so this film follows Alice, who is, born into this slavery town in the South, and she escapes from it to see that it's actually the year 1970, whatever. I forget exactly what year it is. But this movie does have conflicting tones, and I don't mean from the beginning parts where, it's a movie where she's on this farm and she's, dealing with all this racism and all these terrible things that happen to her, and when she gets out, okay, now you're in the 70s, so now you have 70s feel. That stuff worked, but within the 70s feel, this movie, even though the director said that this is not a blaxploitation film, it is definitely taking homage to blaxploitation, films, the style of all those things, and it's also trying to be a very serious, more empowering drama at the same time. And so those two tones conflict within this movie a lot in the last half of the film. And I think if the film decided to go either one of those directions, if it was straight up a blaxploitation, really fun and stylistic film, when this movie was doing that, I was really enjoying it. I thought it was so much fun, and it was so empowering, and Keke Palmer's performance, by the way, is incredible in this film. And then if it decided to be more of a serious drama on this subject, I think that also would have been extremely powerful and very empowering as well. And I think at times those two different tones match perfectly, and it works really well. There's a diner scene towards the last half of this movie that I thought was brilliant. Again, Keke Palmer, incredible in this film. I just think that it just needed to decide on a tone and go with that. I also think this film has some script issues in terms of, once Keke Palmer gets out of this, area, she has to learn 100 years of history all at once. And instead of this character, finding out these things through a natural way, she's just constantly reading about it. I guess, yes, that's how she would learn about it. She would, read books, she'd gain the knowledge from that way. But for a film, that's not really interesting, because you're having the main character be told all this character development, and you don't feel like she earns that character development. Besides that diner scene, that was the only scene in this movie, or not the only scene, but the main scene in this movie where she really, progressed as a character, and she, fulfilled her character arc. But being told something rather than, going through it and, discovering these things in the real world and having different moments teach you those things rather than just reading off a book and seeing a montage of all that, I think that could have worked better. I think this movie would have worked great as like a miniseries, as an 8-episode miniseries. I wanted more development of this character, and especially with the relationship between her and Common's character, I wanted so much more of that. I think it would have been great if the first half of this movie was like the first episode of the show, and the rest of the show was the 1970s, and maybe you can flesh out that tone of the drama and the blaxploitation and all those different things. But I do think, if anything that this film does that is like, okay, I'm looking forward to the future, is with the director and with Keke Palmer. Keke Palmer is going to be in Jordan Peele's new movie, Nope. I'm absurdly excited for that. I think we're getting a trailer for that soon. And then the director, I think she has a very promising career, because this movie has a stylistic flair towards the end of it, and I wanted more of that sort of thing with her direction style. I wanted more of that. So I'm excited to see the future of where this director and this actress goes. But in terms of this movie, I think it is a solid movie. It's okay. I just wish it could have been so much better. I wish it was a miniseries, honestly. I would have enjoyed to see the story drawn out in a more in-depth story. So next up that I want to talk about in this video is called Speak No Evil. And the director said in his little intro spiel about the movie was that he wanted to make the most unpleasant movie, the most uncomfortable movie, the most frustrating movie of all time. And honestly, I think he was kind of successful in that. This movie's about a Danish family who goes to visit this Dutch family that they met on vacation. They invited them to their home, and they thought, why not? It'd be kind of disrespectful to not take their invitation. So they go and they visit their home. And if you go on any vacation with any people that you don't fully know, it's going to be weird. There's going to be some weird things that happen. And if those people are kind of insane and kind of, terrible in their own uncomfortable different ways, and things are very just unpleasant the entire time, and that uncomfortable, cringy feeling that you get, that is this movie. And I know cringe is thrown around a lot. People say that all the time in videos, like, oh, I cringed in this movie, or I cringed in that movie, or whatever it may be. This movie is, I'm telling you, it is one of the most unpleasant experiences I've ever had watching a film by design. Like I said, the director wanted to, get that feeling out of you as an audience member, and this movie was just unsettling from the beginning to the end. Even though something horrifying was not happening every second of the movie, the ending is definitely more horror than the first 2/3 of this movie. The first 2/3 is literally just an uncomfortable family vacation, and it is so just like, oh my god, I can't stop thinking about it because it is just, I don't even know how to describe it besides just unpleasant. Like the director said, this movie goes through so many different ups and downs, and the entire time you don't know what is going to happen next. And I think towards a certain point I was like, okay, I think I got this figured out. I think I know exactly what's happening, and I was right with that. So I think there are some elements with the ending specifically that is slightly predictable, but at a certain point when a movie is predictable, I don't care because it goes down the route that I was hoping that the movie was going down. It's not like I was mad that I figured out the ending of this film. I was mad that the characters were going through what the darkest part of my mind was thinking. It's like, oh my god, that'd be so messed up if this happens, and it did happen. And I was disturbed till the final moments of the film. This movie has some of the most disturbing moments of any film that I saw at the Sundance Film Festival. And although it's not overtly horror and you're not seeing these horrifying things constantly, it is definitely the most unsettling movie that I saw at Sundance. And I saw a lot of really unsettling things. Hatching was very disturbing, but it didn't affect me like Speak No Evil did. Or same thing with Fresh. Fresh had a lot of disturbingly gross things in it, but it didn't bring me down to the ground and have me curl up in my seat as much as I did in Speak No Evil and just want to just turn away and not watch the train wreck that was happening in front of me. But there's something about this film that you just can't look away from. And it's one of those things where if you don't want to sit through an experience that you know is just going to be uncomfortable and kind of terrible for you, you're probably not going to like this movie. But if that sounds somewhat interesting to you, or if you're kind of drawn to the idea of this, then I think it's definitely worth watching. But like I said, it's an unpleasant movie. There's no joy in this movie. There's no watching this movie being like, wow, I really enjoyed that. No, I did not enjoy this movie. I kind of, hated the experience of watching it, but I'm so glad that I did because it's extremely well made, extremely well directed, and has incredible performances from beginning to end. Alright, next up I want to briefly talk about Resurrection, because this is a film that's, I had the poster up for Night House for a specific reason, because that is the reason why I bought tickets for this movie. And it stars Rebecca Hall, for one, and that's the reason why, a lot of people were saying that this was a movie to look out for in Sundance, because she's always great at picking very interesting and unique roles for independent films, like The Night House. If you guys have not seen The Night House, definitely go check it out. It's a great horror movie, and this is definitely a horror thriller that is just oh my gosh, it is so intense throughout the entire runtime. From beginning to end, it slowly ravels up, and it's definitely a slow burn movie, but the tension that this movie has, it brings you to a certain point of tension, and it keeps you at that point, and never, and I mean never, lets go until the last moments of the movie. And the reason why I want to only briefly talk about this is because the ending of the film is batshit crazy. It's insane. It goes to places that I was never expecting. Of all the Sundance movies, I think this was clearly the most unpredictable one of all of them. And it's one of those endings where I think is actually going to turn away a lot of audiences. I think a lot of audience members are going to watch this movie and be, wrapped up in the story and invested in what's going to happen to the characters next. Like, how is this movie going to wrap up? And they're going to see the ending and they're going to just not know what to think. And because of that, they might walk away from this film just kind of empty. And I thought this movie was an incredible allegory. I thought it was a great, metaphor for different things. And I love the meaning of this film. And I love the character arc and the performance from Rebecca Hall. There's a 7-minute, almost 8-minute monologue in this film that is uncut. It is just one camera pointing at Rebecca Hall, her giving this incredible speech, this incredible monologue as the camera slowly pushes in on her. And it was just incredible. It almost brought me to tears. This movie is incredible. One of the best that I saw at Sundance, and I cannot wait to talk about it with you guys once it finally comes out. Like I said, I want to do a spoiler video on this one because I'm curious what you guys think of the ending and the different meanings and everything that it is kind of talking about. And at that point, my Sundance was actually over. I watched all the movies that I had planned on seeing, but they released tickets for some award winners. So I bought tickets for Emergency, which I'll be talking about in a separate video. I watched Fire of Love, which I'm going to be talking about now, and I also watched Klondike. And Fire of Love is a documentary about this couple, these volcanologists who, go out to volcanoes and they explore different ones, the red red volcanoes and the black volcanoes, or gray volcanoes? Oh gosh, I don't remember. But this is an extremely informative movie, as I can clearly, say that I learned a lot because I can't remember if it was a black or gray volcano. But it is an extremely informative documentary about volcanoes for one, but it is mainly focused on the love story and the relationship of these two, subjects that this movie follows. This love story that unfolds of this love for volcanoes and love for each other, and the tragic ending of these two characters because they died at a volcano in Japan. And it is just, it's a tragic story, and I absolutely loved, I usually don't watch documentaries. Documentaries usually either bore me to sleep or they're just not my thing. I don't really like them that much. But Free Solo and Three Identical Strangers were the two that really changed my mind on documentaries and made me more open to watching them. So when this one won the award for documentary at the film festival, I was already interested because the images that they shown of this movie were immediately interesting, and the buzz that I heard about this movie was very interesting as well. And so when I watched this, it is extremely gorgeously shot, and I think that is just credit to these two people who went around with these cameras. And they say in the documentary that they were not filmmakers, that they were scientists first, they were volcanologists first, but they were also two incredible filmmakers. They got these gorgeous shots, their storytelling, and the things that they did. Yes, this is a collection that the director went through 300 hours of footage to put together this movie, but the story really speaks for itself because of these two and their dedication to their craft and to what they did and to their personalities as well, because they have very different personalities. They're very distinct people that loved volcanoes for different reasons and loved each other because of those reasons. They are kind of two sides of the same coin. And I really loved the dynamic and the way that the documentarians really showed the story and the love between these two people. And last but not least was Klondike. And this is a movie. It is about this family, or this couple that is living on the border of Ukraine and Russia. And that's the reason why I wanted to watch this movie, because of all the things that are happening in Ukraine and Russia right now. This movie is based on a true story of the plane crash that happened. I believe it was, oh gosh, was it 2017 or 2014? Something like that. But it is a very, very well done drama about this family, about these horrors that they're going through, of the war, of all these tensions, rising tensions between these two countries. And it's definitely an anti-war movie that is really based in these two characters. And this is a movie where it is extremely well made. I appreciate the hell out of the direction of this movie and the cinematography and the different choices that they made with this movie. It's not my type of movie, unfortunately. So I didn't really enjoy it too much. It was a late night. I was watching it at midnight. It got pretty late. I was falling asleep at a couple points. I had to pause it to kind of step away, get my bearings, and I went back and I finished the movie. And it is incredible. I can't speak enough about how much I love the look of this movie. And they make an interesting choice where I think Roma did this as well, where the director would just set the camera somewhere and you watching these characters, their story unfold in one long continuous take, and you don't really see any movement with the camera. It's just a very static shot, but that kind of makes you feel like you're truly a fly on the wall just observing what is happening, and you're a spectator of these people's lives. And it felt very real and very naturalistic in that way. And I think that's the biggest thing that I can praise about this movie is the direction, the performances, and the cinematography of this film. And the story within itself, the ending is incredible. I was so invested in the last 30 minutes, but it took a long time to get there because the rest of the story, it was just so slow paced. And because of the static shots and because of how late it was that I watched it, and because I wasn't incredibly interested in the storyline up until the ending, I was just kind of there were moments in this film where I was like, okay, now something is happening. Now I'm invested. And the movie would lose me again. And it kept on losing me continuously. And just the moments that I loved in this film were not enough to make me truly love this movie. It's a movie that I appreciate, that I know people will love for different reasons, but it's not my type of movie. So that is my video talking about a bunch of different Sundance movies. This is probably a long one. I know I'm going to talk about a couple others more in depth a little later on. So definitely subscribe to the channel if you want to see more reviews just like this one about these different Sundance movies. And comment down below if you watched any of these Sundance movies that I just talked about here. I'm curious to hear all of your guys' thoughts on all of these ones, and definitely leave a like if you enjoyed the video as well. So thanks guys for watching this video, and hope to see you all in my next one.